Hi, it's Steph, and today I have some yard work to do. This guy and I have some things to dig up. It is now mid-spring, and here in my Zone 6B garden, I've had some time to walk around and kind of assess what took place over the winter, and sadly, I lost quite a few plants this year. I actually lost about 3 rose bushes. I'm pretty sure at this point that these 2 Pugster butterfly bushes are also dead. A couple of perennials that didn't return. And so it's always upsetting, but I suppose we could look at it as an opportunity to maybe open up some space to try some new plants. We're going to get some yard work done today. We're going to dig up some things that didn't make it. We are going to transplant some perennials and maybe a couple of other odds and ends depending on how the day goes. Let's see what we can get done. So here are the first casualties. I have my 2 butterfly bushes, and I did go ahead and test these to make sure that they were dead before I dug them up. And if you want to check if something is dead, you can do what's called the scratch test, and you basically just scratch in 1 or 2 places along the bark of the plant, and here you can see it's just dead wood. If this plant had any viability, you would see some green. And I also took a look for any signs of buds or new foliage emerging, and there was none. These are hardy in zones 5 through 9, and I'm in a zone 6, and usually you want to get plants that are at least to your zone or hardier. And so these mostly should have been fine in my garden, but something that I believe did them in was the fact that I had them planted in a very wet bed, and butterfly bushes like a dry, well-draining soil. And so for that reason, I think a couple of years of moisture kind of took their toll on them, that with the sub-zero temperatures this winter, and it was a recipe for them to just not return. So that's that. And then my rose that I dug up in this bed is the Proven Winners at Last rose. It is a beautiful apricot peach colored rose, very fragrant actually. But again, it didn't return. Now, I don't have a great track record with roses as it is in my garden, but you know, I did have this one for a couple of years. Even though it looks like there's a little bit of green there, there's definitely a lot of dead cane. I've actually already trimmed this rose back quite a bit, given it some compost and some rose tone about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's shown no signs of life. So I'm pretty sure it's dead at this point, so we took it out. Here in my driveway bed, I have another rose that I'm going to go ahead and dig up. It is the David Austin Eustacia Vi or Eustacia V. It is right here, and it also didn't make it. It has lots of dead cane. And going into the winter, I did go ahead and top up the crown of the plant with lots of compost to make sure it was protected, but it didn't seem to help. So I'm going to go ahead and dig it up. While I was working in this bed digging up this rose, I noticed that my Camassia bulbs are starting to come up. There's some there, some here, and some here. And they're actually up and budded and should be blooming soon. And here in my other front border, I have a couple of knockout roses to dig out. And I was pretty surprised to see that the knockouts didn't make it because they're pretty hardy roses. But they were the last ones that I planted, so they weren't as established. So I'm going to go ahead and dig those up. I also have some alliums starting to bloom, and my irises are budded up. So those should all be in bloom pretty soon, and I'm pretty excited about it. But here is that knockout. Also a lot of dead cane, no signs of new growth. Right behind it, I have a big verbascum or mullein plant. So I'm going to go ahead and take this guy out. This knockout here looks fine in this bed. I have 3 planted across the bed, and so this one looks okay. It's a little smaller than the others because, again, I only planted this one here a couple of years ago. So not as established. And the third knockout in this bed is planted right here among these iris and daylily foliage. And I had hope that this one was doing okay because I had a little bit of growth on this cane, but that has since shriveled up. So now I'm assuming this one is dead as well. Here on my front porch, I have these planters with some candy tuft and some butterfly blue scabiosa. I'm actually going to take them and take these perennials and plant them somewhere else in the garden. I've really enjoyed having this here this spring. It's been really beautiful. But because it is perennial, I know that I can move it out of the planter, put it somewhere in the garden where it will come back next year, and I'm going to free up my planter to try something else for summer. Now, the scabiosa butterfly blue behind it is going to be transplanted because I actually lost one of my scabiosa. These are a perennial version of scabiosa, the butterfly blue, but it is a short-lived perennial. And I had it in my garden for about 2 years, and so this year it didn't return. So we're going to go ahead and take those and transplant them. I have one here, and I have one here. As I was working in my flower beds, I noticed that the hummingbirds are back. One buzzed right by me, so I thought, well, I better get my feeder out. And I tie this red ribbon around this post near my feeder every year. Red is a color that catches their eye, so as it blows in the wind, I'm hoping it catches their attention and brings their attention to the feeder. And look at this little guy. There was one just trying to get a drink. So I just mixed up some syrup. I make a simple syrup out of a 1/4 cup of regular white sugar and water. You let it boil until all of the sugar dissolves. And once it cools off, you fill your feeder. Do you see that? Oh my goodness. These guys bring me so much joy. I can see this feeder right outside my kitchen window, and I had so much activity last season. Ah, he flew away. Well, it's the next day. Today, I actually am doing something at my parents' house. So I'm taking my planting services on the road. My mom, she never really asks for anything for Mother's Day, and she had a spot in her yard that needed a little something. So I picked up 2 of these little lime hydrangeas, and I'm going to show you where I'm going to plant them. So they have some pretty plantings here, lots of daisies and coneflower and iris. And they have some pretty mature shrubs and Japanese maples. But there was a tree ring from a tree that got taken down because it ended up dying. And now there's kind of nothing there, so except for some iris. They have some lupin that's kind of gone wild, and it's gorgeous and it's in bloom. So here's the tree ring where I'm going to plant the 2 little limes. Now this is a full sun location, and little limes do wonderful in full sun. I have them in my garden in full sun, and they do so well. And I think they're going to be a beautiful shrub for this spot with the evergreen living fence as a backdrop. Now there's a fairly large clump of iris here. It actually needs dividing, but I'm not going to do that today. And there's some rudbeckia there. And so this ring, while not looking so big on camera, it's actually 6 feet across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place 1 little lime here and another there. So as these grow, and their full size is somewhere between 3 to 5 feet tall and wide, they'll kind of mesh into one another and look like one big hedge of little lime hydrangeas. Here is the information on the little lime panicle hydrangea. It starts with a beautiful green color, then it turns creamy white, and then it'll turn a beautiful mauvey pink as we get into later summer, early fall, once the temperatures cool off. It is a full sun shrub, and it likes 6+ hours of sun. It can also do part sun at 4 to 6 hours of sun. Hardy in USDA zones 3 through 8 or down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, and it gets to be 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. And I actually bought these number 3 containers at the Home Depot for $34.98, and they look great. They're really healthy and nice and full. And I've actually already started to dig the holes, and their soil is actually beautiful. So I brought some in-ground garden soil to use so I could plant these, but I'm not even going to need it because their soil is awesome. So I'm going to add some Biotone startup fertilizer and water them in, and they'll be good to go. So I got the first little lime in, and now I'm going to measure center to center about 2 feet, so that once I plant this one here and they grow to their full size, they'll kind of blend into one another and create this little hedge. There used to be a cherry tree here that died, and that's how this tree ring ended up just being some extra planting space. So there's a stump in the middle there somewhere, so I'm working to either side of the stump, and then the roots for the little lime should just grow in and around. I ended up planting them 30 inches on center. They have about 18 inches from the center of the hydrangea to the edge of the ring, and these can always be pruned in the front if they overhang the ring too much. And we will be moving the iris. I will dig those up for my mom next spring, divide them, and maybe move them somewhere else to give this hydrangea some room for growth. And here they are. I didn't bring my tripod, so I wasn't able to record myself planting them, but it is all done in time for Mother's Day.
Well, it's been another day, and this video has been taken over the course of a few days because it goes like that sometimes, right? We get busy in life, and then things we plan on doing in the garden that day, we just run out of daylight and out of time, out of energy. And so here I am, and today I'm going to work on the transplanting that I intended to do a couple of days ago. And I'm going to start here with this sedum. I have 3 clumps of sedum that I believe is the neon version of the stone crop Autumn Joy sedum. And so you can tell here that there's a light discrepancy going on in how these sedum are growing. This one here is the largest clump, and it gets the most amount of sun. This one here gets a little less sun, and the one on the end that's the smallest gets the least amount of sun. So I've decided that if I want to have groupings of sedum, this is probably not an ideal spot light-wise to have them growing and grow their best. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these from this spot, and we're going to plant them somewhere else in the garden.
Sedums are an absolutely beautiful perennial and so easy and low fuss. They're drought resistant, which is great. And even as they emerge, they have this beautiful tuft of new foliage with these really interesting and pretty leaves. And then they'll start sending up their blooms, which will go through a series of color changes. They'll start off one color, and then they will eventually progress and age to their final color, which in this case is a shade of pink. So they're really long season interest plants and really easy to propagate. So as I'm transplanting these, there's a good likelihood that some of these pieces will break off. And so all I would have to do is take a little piece of sedum that breaks off, poke some holes in my soil, and plug them into those holes, and they would start to root and create a new plant for me. So even if you had a clump of sedum that you wanted to get more of, you can either divide it or just take pieces of it and stick it in other areas of the garden, and they will very easily create new plants. Here on this right side border in the front of my house is where I'm planning on transplanting the Autumn Joy sedum. I am going to remove a bunch of these daylilies that I have growing in this bed. Once I see them bloom and what colors they are, I'm going to be very selective about which ones I dig up, and I'm going to pass them along. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in with other perennials. I do love my iris, so I'll be keeping those. And the foliage stays pretty nice, but I find that the daylily foliage looks really tattered as we get towards the end of the summer. And I've had them in my garden for a few years. I've accumulated a collection of them, and while they are beautiful, I think I'm just done with daylilies for the most part. I'm going to be keeping a few and letting the rest go. So I'm going to go ahead and transplant that sedum in here, and I think it'll look really nice. We're gonna go ahead and divide this large clump of sedum. I'm gonna try to get 3 divisions out of it. And yeah, I'm gonna use my Hori Hori and we're gonna see how it goes. It's such a perfectly round clump that I'm not really sure where to cut it. I would love it to keep this shape, but yeah, we're just gonna try our best. All right, so we have a clump here. And all of these pieces that fell, we can try to prop them up or stick them in the soil to see if they'll root, which they should. But here's one. Here we go. 3 divisions. And I'm all done with the transplanting and dividing of my Autumn Joy sedum. In the back near the shed, I had 3 groupings. I had that large one, a medium, and a small. The large one I was able to divide into 3 sections. So those 3 with the other 2, I ended up with a total of 5 Autumn Joy sedums that I've gone ahead and dotted across the front of this border. I spaced them pretty evenly, so I have 1 here, and then I put 2 near my candy corn spirea. I have 1 on each side. And then a little bit down more, I have the other 2. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out, and I really love the contrast and texture that the sedum has against all of the strappy foliage. And once I dig up some of these daylilies, they'll have a little bit more breathing room, and I think they'll make a really great addition to this border. So here is my patio bed, and in this corner is where I had my butterfly blue scabiosa. Now I've come to learn that it is a short-term perennial or a short-lived perennial, and what that means is that it might live in your garden for 2 or 3 seasons and then stop returning. And that is exactly what happened with the one I had planted here. So I recently dug it up, and I have this one that I've been growing in the container. It's actually all budded up already and getting ready to bloom. So I'm going to take it out of the container and I'm going to transplant it into the garden. And I had another butterfly blue scabiosa that I placed right here in front of this clump of coneflower. I had 2 containers that I needed to transplant the perennials out of, so this is where I put the second one. And right on the side here, I have my Mai Tai Geum that's blooming. These are such beautiful, delicate little spring bloomers. There's tons of buds and they're just getting ready to open up. And right here in my upper driveway bed, this is a retaining wall bed, is where I'm planning on putting the candy tuft. Other than the creeping phlox in pink that I have in the back there, I don't have any spring color in this bed. So I've added the Camassia bulbs, and now with the white candy tuft, I think it'll offer a really nice pop of white in front of that weeping blue spruce. And here it is, all planted up. I really like the way that it looks here, so I'm hoping it likes its new home and it thrives here. Well, I'm glad to have gotten those perennials divided and transplanted and moved into their new homes. So thank you for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.